Welcome to Inside Coverage, where we break down the how and why behind what's going on in the NFL. It is a glorious draft week edition. Frank Schwab, Jori, Epstein, I'm Jason Fitz, and I have to start right here. I just mentioned a glorious draft week edition. We've got so much great stuff happening in the draft, and I got to tell you about it right now. I know you're excited. We're excited. Within the app, you're going to have a great opportunity. Go download the Yahoo Sports app before the NFL draft this week. We've added live activities on iOS so you can watch each draft pick come through directly on your lock screen. That's really badass. Plus, we're going to have an NFL live draft show with me, Nate Tice, Matt Harmon, Charles McDonald, the whole Yahoo crew. Jori will be coming in from FaceTime, Skype, I don't know, whatever it's going to be, technology. She'll be there breaking it all down too. We're all going to be working. Frank's going to be writing his ass off, but we'll be reacting to everything happening for the first 3 rounds. So live on Thursday and Friday on the Yahoo Sports app, also on YouTube, also on X, also on Facebook, also on yahoo.com. Like it's everywhere. So, Jori, your level of excitement to spend that much time with me over 2 days is?
My level of excitement is high. I would say 10 out of 10. And you know that I don't get those very often. Those are hard to come by. But actually what I just realized is it's very fitting that in our Yahoo Sports app, we're going to have the ability to rate with emojis, because underratedly, a lot of general managers around the NFL are super pro emoji. I have a couple of friends who are also in the reporting business, and we'll just text each other and be like, didn't see that GM being as obsessed with emojis as they are when they text us, and all sorts of things. Some of them have their like guaranteed fist bump emoji. I should do a story on GMs and their emojis at some point, but all of which is to say, when you react with an emoji in the Yahoo Sports app, you are more like an NFL general manager than you may have realized.
I love the idea of just the condescending thumbs up, like, got it, get off my back. Like, that's what, with each one of it's just like.
Ask C-Rob about that on the next time he's on a show.
Oh, C-Rob, is he a big thumbs upper or a big anti-thumbs up?
He has received thumbs ups. We all have, but I think sometimes he'll be like, really, that's all they had for me? And I'm like, you got this, C-Rob.
You got blown off. Yeah, exactly.
See, the thing is, like, C-Rob has the ability to reach out to people with, like, legitimately helpful information with a frequency that I do not. And so that's why sometimes it's like, C-Rob's really helping these people out. Like, maybe I want
to see an entire trade worked out between two GMs with just emojis and GIFs. That's it. Like, GIFs, whatever.
I'm telling you, they love emojis.
I just am impressed that the company's going to give me any opportunity. Like, I hope to just use the poop emoji over and over and over again. Like, that's on brand, Jori. Come on.
We're taking it away from you.
I will say, I was listening to the Friday episode of Inside Coverage, and there's a part where Fitz is like, and Jori thinks I overhype everything, and I'm like, except with Aaron Rodgers, I'll agree. It was a big story.
Thank you. I live in a world
Most
where
of your stories are not quite at the level that you say they are, but
I am that excited. Like it works for me because it's authentic.
I am the
authentic. Like, I am truly like a Muppet that's coming in the room. And I'm like, we got news. Like, I get it. Like, I should never do that in front of a camera again, by the way. But the level of excitement is high for the NFL draft, and I'm quite certain that the bosses had a meeting somewhere where they were like, okay, let's peel off the emojis that we know Fitz will use too often. I get it. So it's fine. I just hope that for once I can make it through the whole thing and not want to use the vomiting emoji for my favorite football team. That being said,
a great start here.
Aren't we? Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a 10 on this episode from Jori. I think the gauntlet's already been.
I don't think we are either.
Down to 8, I think. Yeah, 8 tops.
I might need to start giving out individual grades because Frank has not mentioned any of these things. But no, Fitz's enthusiasm does give him a little bit of padding bonus points at the end.
I do feel like I've started the whole show with a couple of turnovers, and I'm just trying to dig my way out of a hole.
All right,
we're going to get into the biggest what ifs of the draft, but I want to start with the most forgotten player I can remember in modern NFL draft history. That's hyperbole for you. Look, it is rare that we have a first overall pick and nobody seems to care. And Jori, I know you've been studying this, you've been writing on it. I can't wait to talk about it. But like, I would like to remind the world that as we sit right now, the Tennessee Titans are going to take Cam Ward. And I even saw Good Morning Football talking about this week. Like, when's the last time we saw a quarterback from a prominent program going first overall and nobody, like, it just, nobody gives a damn. Like, I feel like Cam Ward has been completely forgotten, Jori, at this point. So I'm excited we're going to talk about it, but also it is mind-numbing to me that we do know who the first overall pick is going to be. and nobody seems to care.
Yes, I think that Cam Ward is flying under the radar maybe a little more than he's forgotten, because it's not that people don't think he's the first overall pick. It's that people aren't talking about him. And that is exactly what Cam Ward wants from you. I've been working on a Cam Ward feature that will drop on yahoo.com this week. And I talked to his parents. I talked to his high school coaches, his college coaches, his cousin, Quandre Diggs, who's been a DB in the league for a little while. I talked to all GMs, scouts, all sorts of people from the various stages of Cam's life. And this is what they want. They just said consistently, Cam is a private person. He likes his dog. He likes his girlfriend. He likes his fishing, and he likes football. He's very close with his family, but he does not want to be out in the spotlight, whether that's for commercials or interviews. And he's really not given any interviews. And last I checked, this could change. They hadn't ruled out hiring an agent, but his dad was his agent at the moment. His parents are very involved in his NFL career, and his mom was a longtime coach at the high school. And so this is what they want. And so it was funny, as people were talking to me about how private he was, I'm like, so he is probably thrilled that Shedeur Sanders is getting all of the attention and taking it off of him. And Quandre Diggs was like, oh, absolutely. Like, that is exactly what he wants. He wants you to not talk about him and then him go light it up when he gets on the field.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everything you guys have said, that he is just so under the radar. We haven't talked about Cam Ward at all because Shedeur takes up all the oxygen in the room, and we've known for a long time like this is going to happen. I've said this. I'm kind of on the bandwagon of. I think Cam Ward has been overlooked as a player too, and what he could be, because what was the narrative all fall, all early winter? It was this quarterback class stinks. And we just lumped Cam Ward in with that. And I think that's unfair. I think Cam Ward's a really good player. I think he's a really good prospect. I think that he's going to have a really good career with the Titans. I think he would have fit in perfectly in last year's first round. The 6 quarterbacks win. I don't think he would have been 7th. I think he would have been in the middle. I've really come around. I don't think he would have gone above Drake May or anything, but would he have gone above McCarthy, Penix, those guys? I think he might have. He's a really good prospect. I've come around completely on him, to where at the beginning, because I'd heard so much negativity about the quarterback class, I lumped him in too. And when you start to dig into it, look at him, I think he's really going to be a good player for the Titans. And like you talked about, Jori, what you're writing. I think his path to being the first pick, which is totally unique, really. We think about a guy who's been at multiple schools, a guy who ran the wing T in high school, a guy who started at Incarnate Word because he had no FBS scholarship offers. I like that. I like that this guy hasn't had everything handed to him on a platter his entire life. Nothing against, there's Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was anointed when he was probably 13 years old, right? And there's nothing wrong with his path. I just like the fact, if I'm the Titans, I'm picking a guy who, Cam Ward's not going to come in feeling entitled to anything. He's going to feel like, I'm starting at the bottom again. I think he even said that at the combine. I think there was a quote, something about that. I like the fact that Cam Ward is kind of a self-made man almost. I respect what he's done. I respect his game. I respect his talent. I think he's going to be great for the Titans. I'm really excited about Cam Ward. I know that because he's just been okay, we're like Cam Ward Titans. What are we going to talk about this for 4 months? But once we get on the field in September, I think you're going to see some exciting things out of him. I'm really excited to watch him play.
Yeah, absolutely. The wing T is a great point. And that was kind of the impetus for why I wanted to dig deep on this story. Is Cam Ward is a quarterback who in high school was only allowed to throw the ball 9 to 10 times per game. Then he gets to Incarnate Word, FCS school in San Antonio, his only offer. And it's like, actually, can you throw it 40, 50, 60? There was one time he threw it 65 times in a game. And he had been doing off-field things and sort of practices with a private quarterback coach to get a little more experience outside of high school. But to me, it's just fascinating we talk so much right now about Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart and how he's, in some people's opinions, a polarizing player because there's such a dichotomy between his traits and production, how often he finished the sacks compared to what he's able to do with his explosiveness. That was Cam Ward in high school. Cam Ward had this big arm talent. He had the ability to throw. It wasn't that he was a bad thrower and then all of a sudden became a good one. It was just that they were way better as a running team at his high school, and they were winning and they were making it to the playoffs. And so his coach was like, no, look, if you're throwing the ball, you also need the guys on the other end to be able to catch it. And so that was not what they believed was their best recipe to win. But it was extremely frustrating for the Ward family, who they didn't want to transfer because Cam's mom was the women's basketball coach at the high school, but they kind of stuck with it. And it's kind of like every Friday night, when is Cam going to be able to throw? And in some ways, his cousin Quandre Diggs told me he feels like he's still making up for that. Like the way he plays so aggressively and always wants to throw, and probably needs to temper that down a little bit at the NFL level. Quandre told him, you don't always go win the game. Sometimes you need to be part of the reason that you win the game. And there's this like scarcity mindset of, what if I'm not allowed to throw again? Let me just keep throwing and throwing and throwing. And I just think that the journey from someone who did not have the game experience of throwing this level of volume, and then at every single level, he gets better. He starts to refine it more. He's making crazy athletic plays from different arm angles. He's got this aggressive mindset. I think, like you're saying, we don't see guys coming out of the wing T these days and making it to the first overall pick.
In it's many ways, it's like Brett Favre. If you look back at Brett Favre's history in high school, he didn't throw the ball that much. Like his dad, they basically ran, I think, the option or something like that, which is kind of weird that his dad didn't let him throw more. And then he got that's one reason he landed at Southern Miss instead of a bigger program. But the difference, Cam Ward's obviously a much different path to the NFL. But I think what we talked about a couple weeks ago, NIL, keeping guys in school longer.
Yeah.
This helped Cam Ward so much. He comes into the NFL. He's not an old guy, but he's played a lot of football. I think that's great. And he's been in different systems with different coaches.
Yep.
He's done it all. And I think that really helps him with his transition to the pros.
That's also, guys, where I think there's nuance to the conversation of the good and bad of the current state of college football, because it's become, I think, a lazy narrative to come in and say, well, these kids aren't being developed. I mean, systems matter. So there is something to, hey, getting the opportunity to work with different coaches and learn different systems. Most of these guys that are drafted near the top of the draft are, unfortunately, through no fault of their own, likely to play for multiple coaches, multiple offensive coordinators anyway. But seeing how they can thrive in different systems, like to Frank's point, Cam Ward's 22. So he's not like Tyler Shuck, the kid out of Louisville that's 25, 26 years old. No, Cam Ward is still a kid in age, right? That has this opportunity now to come in, but they've been able to see a lot of football in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different systems. I think there's tremendous value to that. And Jori, you said something I want to go back to for a second, because my opinion on Cam Ward to the Titans, it continues to evolve. I'm the first to admit that. As I've told Frank a million times, I love the thought of Cam sitting for a while, getting the chance to develop, and then coming in. I don't know the Titans are going to do that. But one thing you said really stands out to me, and I think has to inform our decision on what's going to happen for Cam. He likes being a little under the radar. He likes being quiet. I lived in Nashville for over 20 years. I can tell you that it is rare to live in a city where players are as quiet as they are with the Titans. Like at the peak of Taylor Lewan's chaos, I am friends with Taylor Lewan. At the peak of his chaos, you could go to a bar on Lower Broad and people might say hi or they do the head nod, but they weren't bothering him. Like in that city, you can go basically anywhere, anytime, every time, and you're kind of invisible. Some players I know have hated that because they feel like, hey, I walk in the room and my meal should be comped. I'm a Tennessee Titan. Like I'm an NFL player. In that city full of people that have been, are, or will be famous, like it hits a little different. So as you talk, I keep thinking, man, it makes the Titans to Cam Ward relationship seem like maybe it's even better. Because if you're going there and you're thirsty for attention and ad revenue and all these things, like I don't know that that's going to happen for you. If you're going there and you just want to be able to focus on football, it's a great city to be able to do that. So maybe this marriage is even better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think when you look at it, okay, obviously the Giants are not only a big city that might be a little much for someone like Cam Ward who prefers to stay under the limelight, but the Giants are also huge in the city. And then you have cities like the Cleveland Browns and New Orleans Saints, and maybe they're not the same level size of city as New York, but still football is such a focus in each of those that the quarterback is not going to fly under the radar. So I do think it's a great pick. And I think when we talk about whether Cam is going to start right away, I definitely expect him to. And while I think that generally we've seen a lot of quarterbacks not be able to make it, or at least not make it with their first team because of the pressure, that's why someone like Cam Ward has a journey that helped him out. I wrote a story at the end of last week about the transfer portal and how it's influencing quarterback evaluations and quarterback prospects in particular. And in last year's draft, 8 of the 11 quarterbacks drafted last year had transferred. This year, our colleagues Nate Tice and Charles McDonald did a big board. all 5 quarterbacks on their big board, their top 75 players, transferred during their college career. And the reason that's good is because then teams can look, and we talked about this with Bo Nix last week, hey, well, what worked at this passing system and what worked here, and how can we try and build the offense accordingly? Well, we understand how they learn and adjust to a new system in a new locker room because they did it. I mean, Cam Ward did it from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami, and even the times he was in those years, well, his first year at Washington State, he was with Eric Morris, his coach at Incarnate Word, and then Eric Morris left for North Texas, and Cam Ward had another coordinator there. So he got so much exposure. And that's what his cousin Quandre Diggs told him. So Cam Ward did briefly declare for the NFL draft last year in 2024. And he had this conversation with Quandre. And Quandre's like, look, I'm on the Seattle Seahawks right now. I've got Drew Lock in the building. Drew is getting, at best, practice squad reps, like scout team reps. And he is not getting that investment for first team reps with the starters. You need more experience to that. Get that ability. Because if you come in with a level of buy-in that Cam Ward is now going to come in with because he's the first overall pick, you are going to be set up to succeed in a different way because you will get the first team reps. And so I think that while he might be asked to start right away, in some ways, he had this other journey where we talk about the levels of the video games. Cam Ward has played on 3 different levels of the video game since high school before going to the pro level.
I just wonder through all this, how many times in Nashville did a guy walk into a restaurant and say, hey, I'm from the band Perry. Can I get my meal comped? Here's my granny.
Never happens.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
When you walk into a
Not
coffee
sure.
shop and Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran are sitting there having coffee, you ain't getting anything free. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's just, that's real. I also think to flip a little this to the Titans guys, like, let's go back. And I know the Titans are not as popular as everybody in the world, but like, Brian Callahan got this job because of his work with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like, so this is a little bit of a like prove it moment. Like, I'm presuming that the Titans are going to ruin a young quarterback because I just don't trust the organization from ownership down. That being said, the whole reason that Callahan got this job is because they thought they were getting somebody that would be able to either develop or pick a quarterback. Let's be clear. On Thursday night, when the Titans pick Cam Ward, they are telling the entire world that Cam Ward is going to be their future. So now it's up to Brian Callahan to make sure that he gets the most out of Cam Ward if he wants to be part of that future. Like, I'm presuming that this doesn't go well because of the past with the Titans. But if you're Callahan, you got to look at it and say, man, I didn't have a quarterback with Will Levis. If they believe enough in Cam Ward to take him first overall, maybe, Frank, I should be giving Callahan a little bit of a benefit of the doubt given his resume.
I mean, this is it for him. He's got to do it this year. You got to at least, I don't even care about wins and losses. By the end of the year, you have to show Cam Ward is better than the moment he got here in Nashville. And I think he probably can do that, but it is, and you've talked about how you think the Titans are going to ruin Cam Ward. And it's hard to deny that that's not a very good franchise right now, not a very stable franchise, but we said the same thing about the Texans 2 years ago. We said the same thing about the Commanders a year ago. A transcendent quarterback can really fix everything within an organization. I don't know if Cam Ward's necessarily that dude, if he's Jaden, if he's CJ Stroud, but he could be. But if this team flatlines, if Cam Ward just has a miserable rookie season, yeah. I mean, Brian Callahan, who honestly was pretty lucky to get a second year, he could have been easily fired after that first disastrous season. This is it though. You can't just rely on, well, you stuck me with Will Levis and I don't like him. Now, okay, I mean, here's a guy who you drafted first overall.
The Titans spent, as my buddy Buck Rising pointed out to me yesterday, it covers the team. They spent $228 million last year to build a roster around Will Levis. And what they get out of that? The first overall pick in the draft. Yeah. Like that.
Which is why that is a factor in why the general manager's not back. I mean, Rand Carthon did lose his job in part because of that. So there were consequences, but they felt like it was more of a personnel thing than a coaching thing. I think what's interesting to me is when I look at the short recent history of Brian Callahan, I'm like, oh, Will Levis is making all these decisions that Brian Callahan, we saw him on the sideline. He was not subtle in how he felt about this. And so he's not, I wonder like, oh, well, what if Cam Ward gets out there and he throws some interceptions? And he did have some interceptions in his college career that he would like back because of his aggressive mindset. And then you say, well, if he does that with Brian Callahan, will he have the same level of patience? But I think that first of all, there is a degree to which when the coach picks you, they're more invested. I mean, we can say that that's not how it is, but human nature, if a different coach or GM picked you, they're not going to have the same level of investment and buy-in and patience because like you're their guy now. He wants to make him work. On top of that, while I think of it more through the Will Levis lens, before Brian Callahan worked with Will Levis, he was the offensive coordinator for Joe Burrow. Before that, he was Matthew Stafford's quarterbacks coach. And so I do think he's worked with multiple aggressive quarterbacks and seen how you can try and emphasize aggressive quarterback play with a guy like that. And so I think if he taps into the aggressiveness that he saw work with Matthew Stafford, saw work with Joe Burrow, that's probably going to be able to best accentuate Cam Ward's strengths, because even if you got to put up with a little bit of the, I probably shouldn't have done that decision, I probably shouldn't have thrown that ball, bit of a heat check, that is where Cam Ward is going to excel with an aggressive mindset.
Let me ask you guys this. If the first pick in the NFL draft belonged to the New York Giants instead of the Tennessee Titans, would there be more hype today for Cam? Would we be viewing Cam Ward differently?
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And again, that's to Cam Ward's benefit, because he does not want that hype.
Right. And I mean, look, sorry, Tennessee fans, but they're one of the 5 like kind of anonymous franchises in the NFL where we'll get excited about them when they're good, and when they're not good, nobody cares. Like that's just the way it is. But that's why you draft a Cam Ward. You hope to get relevance out of it.
Yeah, and I'll ask this last question on Cam Ward. Thursday night, any chance in either of your minds that somebody makes the Giants, for example, the Browns, does somebody make a home run, historic, oh my God offer? Because we've heard that's what the Titans would want. Do the Titans get enticed by anybody on Thursday night to trade out of number 1? Is Cam Ward playing anywhere else?
No, the Titans need a quarterback. They have not solved their quarterback hole throughout this whole roster. I mean, throughout this whole free agency process. And I think what's fascinating is that this is the first time in the common draft era over 50 years that there is no trades in the first round. I mean, everyone still has their picks. And I think that's reflective of the level of talent that we see in this year's draft. And there is such a drop off after Cam Ward that you just cannot trade out of that when you need a quarterback. And if you're the head coach, if you're the general manager, your job depends on getting this pick right.
Yeah, I think if something was going to happen, it would have happened a while ago. I think you're beyond the point of no return now. You've probably printed Cam Ward jerseys if you're the Tennessee Titans by this point. But a few weeks ago, somebody at the Giants would have said, hey, what's it going to cost? Then you could be like, well, we can move down to 3. We can still get Abdul Carter. But now I think no, they don't even answer the phone on Thursday. Why would you? You're set. You got your guy. You're confident in it. You've done your due diligence, as Jori has talked about. Like, they were just checking every box all the way along. I think they feel pretty comfortable with this pick.
We are 48 hours away from the NFL draft, so we'll take a look at some of the biggest what ifs still out there. We'll do that after a quick break.
The Yahoo Sports app is your ultimate draft day companion. With live activities, you can keep up with every pick without even unlocking your phone. Beef up on the incoming rookie class with expert analysis, grades, and prospect breakdowns. Download the Yahoo Sports app right now and get ready for draft night like a pro.
Welcome back. All right. Draft is almost around the corner. It is around the corner, I should say. And I think we all know at this point that rumors are circulating everywhere. And this is where just most of the world is BS. Like, most of it you can't believe. But there are still some what ifs that we want to tackle. So we'll take a look at some of the biggest names, the biggest spots, the biggest what ifs. We'll do it now. And we'll start with one of the what ifs that this gets really interesting to me, because every mock draft, I've spent the last couple of days a peek behind the curtain. I'm reading every mock draft I can, mostly for pronunciation practice. I want to make sure that I have a reminder of who played where and what we're doing. And mock drafts are like flashcards for me. So I'm reading mock drafts. And at this point, you can almost flop through the first 9 because basically everybody's being mocked the same way. And that includes Shedeur Sanders to the Saints at 9. But y'all, I feel less confident today about the Saints and Shedeur than I ever have throughout this process, simply from talking to people I think are smarter than I am. And over the course of the last week, I've had multiple people tell me that they think the Saints might actually be going defense, not quarterback at all. Plus, we have the people that think that the Saints are going to go Jaxson Dart. There's a what if here of the Saints, Frank, particularly passing on a quarterback this year, that feels stunning to me.
Exactly. And I don't know, NFL draft odds are kind of notoriously fickle, but I still think they're telling in some way. And in the last 24 hours, Shedeur Sanders has gone from the favorite to go to the Saints to being at some sportsbooks 9-1, which is, he's pretty far down the list now. So I think the odds are just shifted because everybody's realized the Saints aren't really in on Shedeur. And now what they do, I don't know. But I have thought about this scenario in my head. I'm going to write about it this week. There's a guy, when you think of New Orleans and you think of football, what do you think about? You think about the Saints, obviously, but who's the royal family there? Well, the Mannings have been pretty big in New Orleans. And at some point, doesn't ownership get involved and say, Kellen, we don't care if you go 1-16 this year if you get Arch Manning next year. Now, Arch Manning might stay at Texas. I get that. But what could turn around the Saints? What could, like, even Saints fans, I believe, would be on board with, yeah, we're not going anywhere anyway. We're very mediocre. We're very boring. Derek Carr's trying to divorce us, of all people. What can give us some juice in this franchise? Is it really Jaxson Dart at 9? Or is it, hey, set this up so we'll just strip down the roster, really not try to win this year, try to get that first pick for a guy who legitimately, if Arch Manning comes to New Orleans, that would just be the perfect match of city and player. Then who knows? Arch Manning might, we talk about these draft prospects in a year from now, Matt Barkley, for one example, of a guy who was, everybody was like, oh yeah, of course he's going to go number 1. And then he plays a full season, gets exposed, and doesn't exactly go as high as we think. But if you could project that Arch Manning goes to the Saints in 2026, I think right now they would sign up for 17 losses. Who cares? Let's just get Arch in here. Let's not draft a quarterback. I'm kind of on board with this. I'm kind of on board with the Saints are just saying, let's just set it up for 2026. We're not going anywhere in 2025. What good does Jaxson Dart do us? What good does Shedeur Sanders do us? Let's swing bigger in 2026 and set that guy up for success.
I agree with Frank that the Saints getting Arch Manning next year would be one of the better options for them. But I think that it's very, very hard to plan around one future player because you can't guarantee you're going to get that guy. It's pretty hard to not win it all. And also, there are a lot of people in the league who will tell you that if you're in the first year of a coaching staff and you really don't win it all and you don't feel like there's progress, well, then the coach risks losing the locker room. Now, what I think is important, though, is that if you're Kellen Moore and you're this new coaching staff and you understand the state of your roster and how many holes there are in New Orleans right now, you should get the best player available. You should just get some sort of premier talent in the top 10 and make sure that you can build around them. I think that's important both because by the time the quarterback gets there, you want to make sure that you have talent whom the quarterback can succeed with. And on top of that, the reality of this league is that so many coaches and general managers get such short leashes that if you get that quarterback now, your clock starts now. If you don't develop that quarterback, like there are so many reasons why you want to say, okay, first year, let's try and get a little bit of a culture when you don't want to lose. Frank, I know that you want Arch Manning, but if you do that, it is going to be very difficult for Kellen Moore and that staff to have the team's confidence the next year.
Like, it's not just Arch Manning, because that's kind of the draft porn, right? Like, oh my God, Arch Manning's going back home to New Orleans where he played high school football. But there's other quarterbacks in the 2026 draft who project pretty well right now. If you talk to anybody, it's like, yes, the 2026 class is really kind of restocking the shelves. Drew Aller and all those kind of guys who, so I think if you don't go 0-17, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic there, but if you end up with the 5th pick, you could still get a difference making quarterback. And I think that why draft? Like you said, the clock starts now. You're using a valuable resource on a quarterback. If you don't love Shedeur Sanders, if you don't love Jaxson Dart, screw it. Who cares? Wait till 2026. I know you really don't want to do that as a first-year head coach and staff. You really don't want that as a Saints fan. But at the same time, you look at this prudently and just say, why would we waste the 9th pick on Jaxson Dart if we don't love him?
The 9th pick, I don't know, but your 2nd round pick, I actually think there's a great case. And I was talking to a general manager about this recently, the idea that you kind of have to assess when you're deciding when to draft a quarterback. Do you believe probabilistically that a guy picked in the top 10 starting immediately is going to be better than someone picked in the 2nd or 3rd round, but getting a year or two where they can sit and learn and adjust at the NFL level? Who's going to be better over the course of 3 to 5 years or even 10? And so I think when you look at this, you say, well, maybe if you get one of the later guys this year and they actually have time to adjust, which most players would be better off doing. Again, Patrick Mahomes, classic example. I'm not saying he wouldn't be good if he played right away, but there's a reason that, I mean, there are absolutely clearly benefits from what he got sitting behind Alex Smith for that first year. And so if you have a guy who can get in the system, understand the offense, and have some of that ability, maybe like play half a game here because they're up and a third of a game there because someone's not feeling well and we got to check it out and get some x-rays before they can come back in. There are benefits to that if you feel good enough. Now, I know you can say if you don't feel great, but I just have trouble saying only draft a quarterback if you're sure on them. Because even when evaluators are sure on them, how often do they fail?
I think the comment here is like only draft a quarterback in the top 10 if you're sure on them. Like as we get further and further into the first round, even I have no problem with the team at the end of the first round saying, "Hey, we're taking a developmental." Like if any of these quarterbacks go other than Cam Ward in the top 12 or 15, I think it's fair to really question the pick. Any of these quarterbacks that go late in the first or in the second round, I'm throwing confetti up and saying this makes a ton of sense. Like development is everything. Now, Frank, I think the hardest part of your theory, and I like where your theory goes, but we have to remember a couple of things here. Number one, that Arch, to your point, could just decide he's going to play all 4 years. So if you decide to suck and Arch doesn't come out, that's tragic. Then also look at the last 2 years, valuable lessons we learned. Last year, there were killer quarterbacks, unbelievable quarterbacks, and it didn't matter how much draft equity you had. You were not trading up to get them. You could have offered every draft pick for the next 2 years, and those teams weren't going to pull out of those top 3 picks. So you can't assure that you can move up. And this year, 12 teams in the NFL lost double-digit games. Even if you suck, I'm not sure you can be sure that you can outsuck everybody else. You can't be sure that Joe Milton isn't going to do something wild at the end of the year that changes the entire top of the draft order, right? So it's just the concept of tanking in a bubble works. The execution of it, especially when we saw how many teams this year were just openly terrible football teams, I would be worried that I'd go 1-16, and that would get me the third pick in the draft, and nobody wants to trade out of Arch Manning. And now I did all that for nothing.
But I mean, that's why, again, multiple quarterbacks in that draft. And again, I want to be clear about tanking. No players ever tank. Like you can't tell it. But the way you kind of wink, wink, nod, nod tank is just stripping down your roster and hey, Spencer Rattler, you're going to start 17 games. Like, sorry, like you're just going to have to eat this one, kid. But to Jori's point, and I think, look, I'm fascinated by this. I think the Atlanta Falcons of 2024 changed the game for everybody, where the Falcons viewed the quarterback situation differently than everybody. Last year on draft night, everybody was laughing at them for drafting Michael Penix. And it turned out they were right. They were smart about it. Yeah, they blew the money on Kirk Cousins. That's not ideal. I get that. But I think now teams are like opening their minds a little bit, almost like the fourth down revolution, the go for it revolution. Like nobody did it for years and years. Then Doug Peterson started doing it and everybody said, oh, hey, that's actually a pretty good idea. We're going to copy that. I think what the Falcons showed teams, take multiple swings at quarterback. Because I think we're entering a different era where finally teams are saying, this is the most valuable position in sports. Why think of it the same way we have thought about it for the first 105 years of NFL football? Let's think about it differently. And if you take a Jalen Milroe, if you take somebody like that in the second round and just say, if he works out, great. It doesn't matter. We're still going to draft Arch Manning or Drew Aller next year, or whoever it shall be. We don't care. We're looking at this differently now. I like that, actually. I like the fact that you take multiple swings at quarterback. So I can get with that theory completely. I don't love using the 9th pick overall, but yes, second round, you're like, okay, let's take a shot on if Jaxson Dart falls there, Shedeur Sanders falls there.
I mean, 9th is right around where Penix was drafted last year, too. Like 9th is right around. So
there's a quarterback change going. I'm telling you, like teams are going to start looking at quarterback differently.
Yeah, quarterbacks are assets. They're assets if they start. They're assets if you develop them to play for your team. And they're assets if you develop them to get traded to another team. Absolutely. It's really, really valuable to have. And I think also when you talk about the backup quarterback position, I've talked to front office executives in the league who say, backup quarterback is one of the top 11 most important positions on the roster. Now, clearly 22 plus special teamers are going to be the starters. So even if that quarterback's not playing as much, even if, you have 3 receivers playing all the time, but you're not having 2 quarterbacks playing all the time in an ideal world, it's just so important because of the influence the position it has at quarterback and how much of a drop-off there is if you don't have a quarterback who can play. And so developing them is great. Jalen Milroe is so interesting, though, because I was asking an evaluator today, basically, how do you view what Jalen Milroe can do and where he's at compared to Anthony Richardson? And the evaluator did have Anthony Richardson a little bit higher, but not by much. Anthony was a little more accurate, but not quite as athletic. And Jalen Milroe has a little more of an X factor. And Anthony Richardson had quite the X factor. And so to me, when I look at it, I say, okay, if you have that similar evaluation for those guys who are super athletic, big arm, all that, but maybe you just shouldn't draft them top 5 like the Colts did. But if you draft them second or third round, there is so much upside. And again, I think that we should probably hit the brakes on the Lamar Jackson comparisons because while both of them are extremely athletic, Lamar was a good passer when he got to the league, and he's only continued to develop that. It was not a question of whether he could pass, and even in the NFL at the beginning, that was more a question of the offense, not whether he was capable of doing it. So this isn't a Lamar Jackson thing, but I do think viewing it through the prism of Anthony Richardson and saying, well, what if you got Anthony Richardson's athleticism or something similar in the second or third round? That becomes a really good value pick.
I actually like the Josh Allen comp to Jalen Milroe a lot more than I like the Lamar Jackson comp because Josh Allen was wildly inaccurate. But one failing on that comp that I think Mina Kimes pointed out and should be echoed, Jalen Milroe, it's not like he was at Wyoming. He wasn't at North Dakota State. He wasn't at a small school. Like Jalen Milroe, the concept of we're just going to coach him up presumes that he hasn't had some of the best coaching available in college football. He certainly has. So I do think we have to have that caveat in that process, Frank.
Well, real quick, how many quarterbacks do you guys think go in the first round? Because I'm to the point where I think 2 and maybe even 1. Because one thing we do overrate is the whole, well, trade up into the first round and get the 5th-year option for the quarterback. Yeah, I guess that has value, but if Jalen Milroe's good, he's going to want an extension long before the 5th year. So
yeah,
there's
I don't think it's about that,
Frank. I think we could have one quarterback drafted in the first round for all the hype about Dart and Sanders and all that. I just don't think these guys are it. Like I don't know that they're worth first round.
Completely disagree. I still stand by. I said it boldly on this show last month. I think 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. 2 of them are in the bottom half of the first round. And it's not about the 5th-year option. It's about the fact that Cleveland sits with the first pick in the second round. So if you want, I don't think Cleveland's taking a quarterback in the first round, but I damn sure think they would take one in the second. So if you want Jalen Milroe, I don't think you can wait overnight. Like if you're Kevin Stefanski, you're looking at it and saying, hey, there's absolutely no pressure. And we understand that, hey, we've already blown the quarterback position, but I can take Jalen Milroe right now. I can slow cook him and I can figure him out. Like that. I think you're going to have to get
What pick are we talking about?
Late 20s. I think late 20s is where we're going to get into.
By the way, real quick, interesting note, BetMGM, the favorite to take Shedeur Sanders right now is the Cleveland Browns. So
right. I was going to say, I think that's much more likely in the 20s than taking Jalen Milroe, especially because there are several quarterbacks. I mean, on one hand, you could say when the Browns swung for Deshaun Watson, they were trying to get that sort of athletic, mobile quarterback. It might not work. It might combust spectacularly, but if it goes well, it goes well. But can they take another home run swing like that? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that
my only counter to this is it's not just the Browns. Second round starts with the Browns, and then the Giants, and then Titans and Jags out of the market. Then the Raiders probably still in the market. The Saints are high in the second round, still in the market. Like there are enough teams. There's a run on quarterbacks in the second round. If we don't get through the bottom of the first, like I honestly think Shedeur and Jalen are both trade up bottom of the first round guys when this thing's all said. Can I give you, speaking of bold predictions, can I give you a wild bold prediction that I'm just giving you this on the record in case it happens and then we can clip it off and I sound brilliant about the Saints?
Frank, what if we say no?
Yeah, no. Moving on.
You cannot give us a bold prediction.
Fine.
I'm
giving it to you anyway. I'm giving it to you anyway. Look, here we go. Jaxson, follow me on this. The Saints draft Jaxson Dart with the 9th overall pick. Derek Carr obviously is so mad, he wants out. Day 2 of the draft, Derek Carr is traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who don't have a quarterback, and they need one. So they find the room, they bring in Derek Carr, they get their established starter that they know can win them enough games right now. Derek Carr, by the end of day 2 of the draft, is the Steelers quarterback. Jaxson Dart is the Saints quarterback.
I can see it. I mean, Derek Carr's going somewhere. He ain't.
Yeah.
The only thing I know about, I think I said this Friday, the only thing I know about the Derek Carr situation right now is Derek Carr ain't going to be the quarterback for the Saints on opening day. Like, I think I'd be shocked if that happened. So, yeah, I can see it.
The thing is, like, the whole Derek Carr to Pittsburgh thing, I think where it falls is that I don't know if Derek Carr is going to play in the NFL in 2025. If he goes through with this rehab process, I think it's 2026, which doesn't particularly help Pittsburgh.
My thought is more that he's just going through the rehab process because he wants to force the Saints' hands.
Yep.
And once he's traded, he's like, you know what? We can just rehab it and I'll worry about it later.
The shoulder feels pretty good.
Wow. Walking around with dead arm. All right, let's get to another what if in the draft around one of the biggest names in recent draft memory, Ashton Jeanty. Everybody's got a ton of opinions. I don't want to relitigate whether or not you should draft a running back this high. I just don't. But I do think there are a lot of what ifs here. So, Jori, what's your best what if on Ashton Jeanty?
I think my what if with Ashton Jeanty is what if the Chicago Bears get him in the first round? And I love this idea because I think when you look at what Ben Johnson, current Chicago Bears head coach, did when he was the offensive coordinator in Detroit, when they took Jahmyr Gibbs 11th overall, we're like, a running back 11th overall in this economy? And I think that we kind of go through this and we say, oh, actually, having David Montgomery and having Jahmyr Gibbs, that looks good. Having two running backs, having an offensive line scheme, that plays well to what Ben Johnson can do. And to me, when I look at what the Bears should be doing, clearly the number one thing Ben Johnson needs to succeed is to be able to help Caleb Williams thrive. That, to me, is not about the passing game looking amazing. The Bears tried to give Caleb Williams a deep receiver stable last year, but he didn't have the protection. They didn't have the run game. There were some questions on defense at times. And so I think, to me, helping Caleb Williams is not allowing him to show his strengths. It is protecting him and giving him a higher floor rather than trying to reach that ceiling.
I've said this before, and I want to say it again because I'm almost wish casting this at this point, but I could just see the puzzle pieces fitting. I think the Denver Broncos trade up into the top 5 and get Ashton Jeanty. Like I think that they trade. I think they trade with Jacksonville. Here, I unearthed this, and DenverBroncos.com is where I got this, and I couldn't believe it. In Sean Payton's last 13 drafts with the New Orleans Saints, that team traded up 22 times and never traded down ever. Like in his last 13 drafts. In his first 2 Broncos drafts, they traded up 3 times for players. Once was Marvin Mims, Sean Payton's first pick as the Broncos, whatever. I mean, we all know he's running the show there. Second pick, Riley Moss, they traded up to get him. Last year's draft, they traded up for Troy Franklin. And Sean Payton's teams in 17 drafts have only traded down 1 time without a veteran player coming back to them. They've traded down a couple times with a veteran player coming back. But Sean Payton does not trade back in the draft. He trades up. And we saw reports today, the Broncos are putting out feelers about trading up in the NFL draft. Yeah, no kidding. That's what Sean Payton does. The Broncos did nothing at running back all offseason. And yes, they could sit there and probably take Omari and Hampton. He's a very good back, but Sean Payton likes to swing big in the draft. And I think that they're looking at this like, yes, if you look at the value charts, it would cost the Broncos the 20th pick, next year's first, and a 3rd round pick to move up to 5. That's very steep. I get that. But Sean Payton has never cared before. Look at the Marcus Davenport trade. They traded a future first to go get him. Why wouldn't they trade way up for a position they need for a player who might be one of the top 3 players in this NFL draft? And he's on a different plane than every other running back. I really truly think there's a shot that this happens. They move ahead of the Raiders, so they're worried about there was 6. Now the Jaguars might take Jeanty with 5. I think that's on the board too. But I think it's the Broncos. I think the Broncos take Jeanty. If you look at Sean Payton's history of saying, F these picks, I want my guy. I want a difference maker. Jeanty's the difference maker at the biggest position of need. And I think the Broncos feel they're close. I don't think the Broncos feel like, we can't trade draft assets. We're still rebuilding. No, they think we're really close with Bo Nix. Let's just go for this thing. That's Sean Payton's history. I'm putting it out into the ether, so I hope it happens because I think it would just be fun and awesome. And I think Jeanty would rush for 1,600 yards as a rookie. I think that Sean Payton with Jeanty would be magic, and I hope it happens.
At the risk of falling victim to recency bias, I think that if that happens, we should give Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt because even if he is giving off a boatload, like what he did with Bo Nix exceeded expectations so significantly that he deserves a little bit of that runway. And I think that, to me, there are head coaches in this league and play callers in this league who are able to identify talent well. There are other play callers and head coaches in this league who are able to develop and or scheme talent well. Sean Payton can do all of that. And so I trust that if he gets a player, particularly on offense where he is calling the plays, he is going to be able to maximize that player and get the value out of them.
I love that call, and I like the idea of trading up for Jeanty. I just had a different team on my what if. I keep thinking about the Cowboys and the all-in concept that we have for the Cowboys. I know that the Cowboys are not necessarily like the Cowboys have become a very smart, calculated team that uses the top of the draft very well. I want to give them a lot of credit organizationally. We're hard on Jerry Jones. Let's not be hard on the way they draft. They have drafted a lot of stars, right? But I keep looking at it thinking, man, all right, let's put these dots together. Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks were never afraid to trade down, and they were never afraid to trade down and still take a running back, frankly. If the Raiders, who have plenty of needs and plenty of best player available logic in their locker room, are looking around and they get a big offer from Jerry Jones, I think about relationships. Jerry Jones, Mark Davis obviously have a connective relationship ever since the move to Vegas of some sort. So I look at all these things together, and it just makes sense we get our new Zeke, we get our superstar. What about the Cowboys moving up? Jori, you're giving me a look of absolute disdain for this. Do you not like we out on the Cowboys moving up to get Ashton Jeanty?
Fitz, it's not 1993. The Cowboys are not moving up to get Ashton Jeanty. And I'm not even talking about the running back element. I'm talking about the Cowboys moving up and trading. Jerry Jones is not that wildcatter. And by the way, he said all in last year. He didn't say it this year. And his definition of all in, which he still believes he fulfilled, was getting Dak Prescott signed to a major contract and CeeDee Lamb signed to a major contract. If anything, the Cowboys being all in this year would be all in to signing Micah Parsons to a big contract. The Cowboys don't need to reach because they have a top personnel evaluator in Will McClay, who for years has been excellent at finding them prospects. They're more likely, in my opinion, to trade down and trade up. And I don't think they're going to trade down this year, but it has been a long time since they have said, you know what, we really want to go trade up for that guy. If anything, they often draft offensive linemen in the first round, which wouldn't surprise me. I know it's not a sexy pick by any means, but
terrible, Jori.
The Cowboys
but they need it. They definitely need it. Like, you're right.
The Cowboys
and it's deep.
historically have very much been the type of team who, when they are good on the offensive line, they are good generally. And when they are not good on offensive line, they are not good. And oh, by the way, they drafted offensive line routinely in the first round when they had quarterback type backgrounds at their offensive coordinator. And this year they hired an offensive coordinator who was an offensive line coach most recently in Clayton Adams coming from Arizona. So I think that is very possible. But I mean, realistically, they do need a receiver. And to me, the Cowboys, one of the great things about their first round drafts, it's incredible how many of their recent first-round picks they've hit on, and some of them are so not what we're expecting. Micah Parsons, 12th overall. I was in the Cowboys building when they made that pick. It was 2021, and so we were kind of in that, like, we could be in the building, but we still had to wear masks, and it was a small group of us. And Jerry Jones told us that night, pressure, 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 which was to say that Micah Parsons, who was a full-time linebacker, not an edge rusher, not playing at the line, on the line of scrimmage at Penn State, that he was going to become an edge rusher. And we're like, oh yeah, classic Jerry optimist. He always thinks that the highest possible outcome is what's going to be the outcome. And then they did convert Micah to an edge rusher. CeeDee Lamb, it was surprising. It was like, you have all of these needs and you're taking a receiver when they still had receivers in the house. They still had Amari Cooper. And it was like, no, actually, CeeDee Lamb falling to 17th was great value pick. And now he made it to another contract. And so I think that the Cowboys don't need to trade up. First of all, they didn't have their best year last year, so they have a higher pick than most of their recent natural drafts would have had. But also, they tend to find players where they're at, and they tend to do a good job of letting the board kind of come to them.
Maybe I'm just in my fantasy football hive mind here, but I think the Cowboys double tap at the skill positions. I think they draft a Matthew Golden at 12, Tatoria McMillan maybe at 12, and then go get one of the Ohio State backs in the second round. They need juice on that offense. They really do. Yeah. I mean, and this is a draft. But I also don't discount the Jeanty thing. We have to think about this. Like, Omarion Hampton's a really, really good prospect, and he's going to be worth a first round pick. And Jeanty is so much better than him. Like, I mean, this is just, he's on a superstar plane already. So I think that there's some team, I truly believe that some team is going to, I think Jeanty goes before 6. I really do. Like, I think some team is either going to move up or the Jaguars are going to be like, whatever, Mason Graham, whatever. We'll take Jeanty because he's a better player overall. He's becoming a really interesting figure in this draft for me.
If Jeanty is there at 12 when the Cowboys are on the board, they should absolutely take him.
The Bears, I just
think,
him,
one,
right?
he's not going to be. The Bears are at 10. Yeah. You've got other teams before that who would be able to benefit from him. I just think that it is not going to be worth the cost to trade up.
Yeah, and I will say, if wide receivers where they want to go, then that supports Jori's thought of maybe even trading down because, at this point, the line between Golden and McMillan, like, you could probably get that value later. It'll be interesting no matter what. All right, we'll take a quick break, and then maybe the most interesting theory of all, and it doesn't even involve somebody that will be drafted, but it will impact the draft. We'll do that after a quick break. So the NFL draft Thursday in Green Bay, Jori, you've got a what if that involves a particular person that has some history in Green Bay. Give it to the world.
Yes, I think, what if Aaron Rodgers on Thursday announces his retirement? What do the Pittsburgh Steelers do? What do the Minnesota Vikings do? What do the Green Bay Packers? So annoyed that they finally are moving on from Aaron Rodgers, and now they're hosting the draft, and they're not actually able to psychologically move on from Aaron Rodgers. I don't think this is that crazy because it's only been a few years since it was the morning of the draft. I remember I was like getting my oil changed because I was like, oh, the draft doesn't start for a few hours. It should be quiet. And I see the notification come through on my phone, Adam Schefter saying that Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. This is not something that broke in January or February or March. It was was something that really began to heat up in earnest the morning of the draft. And as much as Aaron Rodgers says he doesn't want attention, he's very good at getting attention when it is warranted or not. So I don't think it's crazy to think that we could have Aaron Rodgers clarity. Now, I still believe it is more likely that he plays in 2025 and more likely that he joins the Steelers sometime probably between June and September 1st. But I don't think we can rule out the fact that, I mean, hey, Aaron Rodgers told us he's got a lot going on in his personal life. He's kind of investing in different things. He's in a serious relationship. And he doesn't feel like he and the Steelers owe each other anything. I mean, there is a sense that, I mean, there's a definite chance that this could happen. And I think if Aaron Rodgers wants to retire, when better to make that announcement than Thursday?
Oh, my goodness. But Aaron keeps telling us he doesn't like attention, so he wouldn't do that. Come on. Come on. But yes, I mean, and all of a sudden, the one team that would affect, obviously, is the Steelers. I don't know where the Steelers are at right now. If I was, as we talked about after the Pat McAfee interview, like, I think the Steelers need to move on right now. And you just reassess. If Aaron Rodgers comes to you in July and says, yeah, actually, I do want to play, you start at square one and you say, okay, let's talk about this as an organization. Do we want this? Like, let's reevaluate this whole thing. But right now, they got to be out. But I think if that does happen, and I can't rule it out. I can't rule out Aaron Rodgers announcing Thursday afternoon that he wants to play for the Steelers, or he's going to sign there, or he's going to retire, or he's going to start his own game show, or whatever Aaron Rodgers is going to do. It would not surprise me if that happens Thursday. But I think at that point, the Steelers, I mean, they're the one team that's really would be affected by that.
I think either way, whether he announces he's retiring or whether he announces he's coming back, doing it on Thursday, when the draft is about to be in Green Bay, just ask yourself this. On Friday morning, when you turn on Get Up or Good Morning Football, all of the shows that are going to be reacting to the first night of the draft, if Aaron Rodgers has made an announcement, are they talking about a single, or like, does it matter to either of those shows anymore where Shedeur was drafted, or are they spending hours talking about what's next and what's going to happen and what's it mean and is this real and this the ability to take over the entire news cycle on one of the biggest days of the NFL calendar? I mean, it's just too Aaron Rodgers not to make it happen. Like, now that I've heard this, I can't unhear it. And it's all I keep thinking about is Aaron Rodgers letting the world know like 30 minutes before the draft so that the entire opening, like the worst part of the draft is that we all know Cam Ward's going first, but the NFL is still going to make sure that, you know, Roger Goodell comes out and does his whole spiel. And then they're going to put the Tennessee Titans on the clock, and they're going to make that entire clock run down just while they do all their ads and everything else. And then they'll put people behind the curtain for the prep of our live show. We know that we have to be ready for the first 30 minutes of the live show to talk about whatever, because it'll take that long to get the first pick out. Not if Aaron Rodgers makes an announcement. Now, all of a sudden, the entire 30 minutes will be spent talking about Shedeur and Aaron and the Steelers and what they're going to do next. Like, this is too brilliant, Jori, not to make it happen. I think you're right. I think this what if has to happen, and all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers, one way or the other, play or not play, we're going to find out Thursday.
See, I disagree. I think if he retires, he does it Thursday, but if he wants to play, he doesn't tell us yet, because I think he kind of likes having that power over the Steelers. Now, the risk of that, which Kirk Cousins, despite getting the deal done, faced with the Falcons last year, is that they draft another quarterback. But let's be real. Anyone the Steelers are going to take in the 20s or later, they're not going to start over Aaron Rodgers in the first year.
I see, and I think Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers organization in my mind and says, all right, I'll make a commitment right now if you commit to not drafting a quarterback night one. Like, you commit that you're not bringing somebody to the building, I'll be in. I just... Look, I'm piecing all this together. Like, this feels like the world's best theory at this point. This is maybe Jori's finest theory work of all time. If this works out, we clip this off and Jori is completely psychic. This is brilliant.
I don't even know that it's that psychic. I feel like it's just like you understand a little bit about how Aaron Rodgers' mind works and how he's operated in the past. And it's like, okay, let's do it again. Let's run it back, folks.
So let's stick with vets for a second, because what if could also be frank around, like, what if Tyreek Hill on draft night, like, what if this is the moment that the Dolphins decide to get rid of, I mean, Hill, Jalen Ramsey, they got pieces, but Tyreek Hill is still going to move the needle if he gets traded somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And I found it funny that their GM, Chris Greer, came out and said, like, we're not even considering it. Yeah, somebody gave us 2 first-round picks. Like, I don't even know why he would say that out loud, because I don't think Tyreek Hill is untouchable at this point. Why would he be? He looked like a completely different player last year. Okay, go for it. Yeah, I want to hear it because I don't know why.
Chris Greer is one of the longest tenured general managers, and the success he has had does not align with that tenure. And I think it was something like the longest tenured GM who haven't made it to a Super Bowl game. I'm not saying Super Bowl win, but Super Bowl game were Chris Ballard in Indianapolis and Chris Greer in Miami. And so I'm not saying the guy should lose his job. I don't root for people to lose their jobs, but I do think that the reason you keep Tyreek Hill is because you just gave Tua Tagovailoa a big contract. And even if you want to say the Miami Dolphins are like quietly needing to be in rebuild mode, you gave your quarterback a contract and you have been there for a long time relative to the success you've had. You got to win.
That's very fair because, I mean, as we know, general managers / coaches make a lot of selfish decisions. Like, what's my self-preservation right here? And trading Tyreek Hill might not be in the best interest of self-preservation, but neither is trading Jalen Ramsey, really. And it seems like that's going to happen at some point. So I don't know. I think if a team calls up the Dolphins and says, we'll offer you this, and it's reasonable, I'm looking for the exit ramp. I mean, Tyreek Hill, again, looked like a completely different player last year. All of a sudden you start looking at the age and you're like, yep, he's about at that age where no longer is he going to be the fastest guy in the field every game. Maybe it was a wrist injury. Maybe you're gambling that he doesn't go somewhere else and put up 1,700 yards. But I'm kind of looking for the exit here. And the off-field stuff is a constant distraction with Tyreek. So what if somebody put this out there and I get like Fitz said a little bit ago, I can't unhear it. What if the Chiefs called and we're like, hey, we want Tyreek back? What was it going to cost? I think that would be phenomenally entertaining.
Should they call?
It's not going to happen,
yes. Do I think that they should pay anything significant? No. I think one of the biggest reasons the Dolphins don't want to part with Tyreek is because, with all due respect to Tua Tagovailoa, he is not Patrick Mahomes, and that's okay. We can all say that out loud. But Patrick Mahomes is able to play and elevate everyone, regardless of who his receivers are. Tua is not proven to be at that level where even without a star receiver, he's able to be great.
I just will stack all of this together. So maybe I'm a GM that decides I want to trade out of Tyreek. I want to trade out of Jalen Ramsey. And with the pick in the middle of the first round, because of the way the quarterbacks have fallen, I have 2 years left on Tua. I don't know where the health situation is like, and I don't know if I'm going to have to rebuild. Maybe I take a quarterback that needs a little bit of time to develop. I still have Tua playing while I'm developing Tua's replacement. Not popular, but it allows me to reset the organization. If I shock the world and take a quarterback, go back to Frank's theory early. Do I take a quarterback in the middle of the first round? Because the way the board has fallen at that point, let's say that, Frank's theory is right. Cam Ward's the only quarterback off the board. How often is Miami going to be sitting there saying, hey, we have a shot at the second best quarterback in this year's draft? Maybe if their evaluation has a high number on somebody like Shedeur, if their evaluation has a high number on somebody like Jaxson, does Chris Greer essentially just press the reset button on what the entire franchise is doing?
No, you have to be able to show the organization that you believe in the reason you extended the quarterback. You cannot give up, especially when Tua's done fine. Like, he hasn't played badly, and he has stayed healthier since his contract and beforehand. So you cannot go ahead and do that. I just think that you have to show that your job after extending that quarterback should be to go support that quarterback. Now, 3 or 4 years in, fine. But this is like a year. We haven't even been a year since we got to his deal done.
It's just crazy how bad this went for the Dolphins so quickly. Like, we were like, oh, it's an ascending team and blah, blah, blah. Now we're here a year later, like, yep, you're going to trade Jalen Ramsey. Tyreek Hill might be cooked. You might want to trade him. Tua Tagovailoa, maybe you need to draft his replacement. Like, this team hasn't won a playoff game in 24 years. And now we're talking about blowing it up. It's just, I feel so bad for Miami
it's these
fans.
narratives that you can't ignore. Like, you can't ignore is the locker room really responding to Mike McDaniel? Like, are the reports true of players just showing up whenever they wanted to and missing practices or showing up late to things? It feels like, that age-old college football term, like lack of institutional control, is part of whatever's happening at the culture there. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, might they trade Jalen Ramsey? Does Tyreek Hill want out? And they've got a quarterback that, to your point, Jori, they've committed to, but now has a salary cap number over the next 3 years of $53, $56, and $65 million, which makes it much tougher to win football games throughout the process of this if you're not doing a great job of roster construction. So, like, it feels like everything around Tua is imploding, and that's just part of, like, in my mindset, I'm looking at it saying, how do you save a sinking ship? And the Dolphins today feel like they're a heck of a lot closer to being a sinking ship than they are to being a truly elite. Like, when you look at, okay, you don't want to be stuck in the middle of the road. So the question is, do they have the pieces necessary to suddenly compete with Kansas City and with Buffalo, and with whatever the Chargers are about to become, and with whatever the Ravens consistently are? Like, are the Dolphins about to be in that category? And I don't think they are. So now you've got to make a decision as an organization. Are you ripping it down to the studs and rehabbing the house? Or are you trying to figure out a way to make the house that you have built work? And I don't know that there's an easy answer for the Dolphins.
I think the answer is you try and make the house that you have built work in 2025, and then you assess. Because a lot of the issues culturally last year were Tua Tagovailoa played 11 of 17 games, and in those other 6 games, the quarterback play was just completely disastrous for the most part, and that was very frustrating to people like Tyreek Hill and other people on that team. Now, I think you can ask defensive questions like, oh, Vic Fangio, there the year before, the players didn't respond well to him. They didn't like him. Then he goes to Philly. He's fantastic, totally revolutionized that defense. But even that, I'm like, okay, who's saying it's breaking news that Miami and Philadelphia have different cultures as cities and as football teams? Like, we all knew that. So then your job as a coaching staff should be get coaches who are going to fit well with your culture. Now, maybe some of that is needed for culture change, but part of this is just understanding where you're at and that you're recruiting guys to the city of Miami. To me, this is, if Tua can stay healthy for a full year this year, you should be giving him every tool to succeed this year and then see what happens next year.
But he's only remained healthy.
A massive deal 10 months ago.
He's only played every game in his 5 years. He's only played every game once. Like at what point he played 11 games last year? His first year he played 10, then 13, then everything, then 11. So like, I mean, there's a question of how do you even trust that? I hear you, but what proof is that? What proof of concept do we have that Tua can actually play a full season?
They signed him without that proof of concept, and that's what they were willing to believe. But I also think, okay, the dead money right now is $137 million. Then it goes down to $79 million. And then in 2027, it'll be at $16.8 million. So you are committed to this guy for 2 more years. Go make the best of it for this year. And then if you want to consider drafting like a mid-round guy next year to start developing, fine. But I think right now you should try and get the most out of your investment. I don't view this as a sunk cost yet. I view this as you haven't made this investment. Now go make work.
My only counter to that is think about what you said earlier, Jori. Like backup quarterback is the Dolphins to me are primed to take a quarterback somewhere in this draft because you've got to have somebody, like to your point, they are committed to Tua for the next 2 years, but all of these guys in this year's draft are going to need a year or two to develop, and they don't have any real options still at the backup quarterback position that they can feel great about. So like at some point, don't you have to at least start addressing it from a backup position? And if that backup happens, like if the Dolphins spend a 2nd-round pick on Jalen Milroe, why is that not a smart strategy? If Jalen develops, great, then you can make your decision on what to do with Tua. If Jalen doesn't develop, then you took a flyer on a quarterback. And that earlier in the show, we said you got to start doing that.
Yeah, I think 2nd is a little bit high for a quarterback. I'm not saying it can't work. I understand the Philadelphia Eagles made it work with Jalen Hurts, but they made it work with Jalen Hurts and got Carson Wentz out in the process of doing so. And I think that if you're Miami, you got to give Tua a little more time. If you don't believe in Tua enough to give him 1 more year, then you shouldn't have signed him to the deal 10 months ago.
Absolutely. By the way, do we think other veterans are on the move in the draft? I mean, Trey Hendrickson has been out there. Does a team like the Falcons be like, yes, we need a pass rusher? Is George Pickens? I love how the Steelers kind of put that out there. Like, we're not shopping George Pickens, but well,
if you want him,
if somebody called us, we'd listen. So you can be like, we don't know how that report got out there. We said we're not shopping you, but you kind of put out the word that George Pickens is available. Like, I think that they made that very clear, and that makes sense because him and DK Metcalf are kind of the same dude. Do we think any other veterans are moving? I think Jalen Ramsey for sure moves. I don't know about anybody else.
I do not think Trey Hendrickson is moving. I think Trey Hendrickson wants money, and so he's trying to move. But I think if he was going to move, I do agree with you that if he is going to move, Atlanta is a good place, but I don't think so.
What about Jalen Ramsey? You think Jalen Ramsey makes it through the weekend?
Yeah, that could happen. Again, I still think that who are we moving for? We saw the A.J. Brown trade happen, though. So I think, I would say Jalen Ramsey is one of the higher priced ones. Could we see Detroit go get Jalen Ramsey?
I want to see the Buccaneers go get him. They need cornerback bad, and that's a good football team. The Buccaneers have a roster where they should be thinking like, we can win. We can win big too. I would love to see the Buccaneers. Go get
5 guesses where I'd like to see Jalen Ramsey end up for a mid-round draft pick. I just like, look, you got to get some influx of talent. Here's what I know. Hang out with us Thursday, Friday. We will be doing live stream work all over the all over the Yahoo app, on the Yahoo site, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Everywhere you consume anything, you will be able to find our live stream. We will be working our tails off, and then also be sure you're interacting with us in the process. Also, follow us on social media at Jori Epstein, at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. We'll be back Thursday for round 1 of the draft. So weird schedule, live stream Thursday, Friday, and then inside coverage will be back to you on Saturday, reacting to everything that we've seen. So stick with us. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe. That way you know when the new episodes come out. No, we went a little long, but it's draft week. Everybody's fired up. So Derek Carr is going to make sure that George Pickens doesn't go anywhere, and my theory is going to make me look brilliant if it happens. Let's hope. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. Enjoy draft week.